Hey, it's Hyla. I interviewed Dev Patel for his new movie, Monkey Man. It's the first time that he's ever directed a film, and his journey from making it and overcoming imposter syndrome was really fascinating to me, and I wanted to share it with you. Everything that could possibly go wrong in making a film did, from COVID shutdowns to literal broken bones in his body and even a death on set. And despite all that, and his personal battle with doubting himself, Dev's new film is out in theaters now. Here he is getting a standing ovation at the film's premiere at South by Southwest. This reaction brought him to tears. So how did we go from imposter syndrome to a standing ovation at one of the premier film festivals in the world? There's some great takeaways that I learned from my conversation with Dev that I want to share with you today. So Dev is an incredible actor, and he's been doing it since about 2007. He was on a show in the UK called Skins, but really what blew him up was Slumdog Millionaire in 2008. That film just took over the culture. It won Best Picture at the Oscars and just put him in a different stratosphere. In 2016, he won a BAFTA and was nominated for Best Actor in the film Lion. So in total, Dev has about 17 films under his belt, 5 TV shows that includes that HBO show Newsroom that was written by Aaron Sorkin. So at 33, he is clearly an industry veteran and is loved by not only his peers, but his fans alike. And yet, what's really interesting is that despite all this success, he still suffers from imposter syndrome and low self-esteem. It's something that he's talked about in past interviews. I thought it was really interesting to explore this because, listen, I don't know if he has ADHD. I'm not going to diagnose him here. I didn't get a chance to ask him that specifically, but there's obviously some flags and some things that you're going to be able to relate to. He even talked about as a kid how he had too much energy and was always getting into trouble. It's one of the reasons why his family put him into Taekwondo to kind of manage that energy. And, you know, when it comes to ADHD, it doesn't surprise me that imposter syndrome and low self-esteem often manifests itself. And one of the reasons it does that is because for so much of our lives, we are told no. We are told no at much higher rates than everybody else. And that's because we have all these amazing ideas that are popping up into our heads. And, you know, as kids, we don't quite know how to decipher what's a good idea, what's a bad idea, you know, how to put them in different compartments, how to manage all of them. And we just want to act on them. And so we're doing this so often. And as a result, people are telling us no at much higher rates than the average kid. And if you're someone that also had the kind of ADHD where you have a lot of energy, you're having to move your body a lot, you're also being told no. You're also being corrected. You're also being disciplined at much higher rates. So it doesn't surprise me that we often see imposter syndrome at higher rates with people with ADHD. That's part of the blessing and the curse of having so many great ideas. So getting back to Dev, he is embarking on this completely new space as a director. Monkey Man is the very first film that he has ever directed. And despite having all this success in his acting career, he's trying something new. And if you don't know, you know, outside of my work in the ADHD space and as a documentary filmmaker, I also do a lot of interviews, one of them being with this Australian news program called The Project. I'll link the full interview that I did with Dev in the show notes. But some context here, making a movie is crazy and it's hard. And you have to slightly detach yourself from reality. You have to think that you're crazy enough to be able to make a film. And then on top of it, think that you can make one that people are going to care about and that will be successful. for Monkey Man, that was even harder because there were so many things that went wrong. Check this out.
Can you give people just like a 30-second bullet point of all the insane things you had to go through to get to this point?
Biggest slum in India. We're location scouting this movie. Pandemic hits. I literally have to get out on the last seat of the last flight out of the country, film tanks. Then I managed to find, through a producer friend of mine, a guy that's got a studio in Indonesia. We get there, we have a crew of 450 people, 9 months in this one bubble, trying to make this movie. I lose my production designer, have to hire the local guy that's facilitating. He does amazingly. Couldn't get the stunt team in from John Wick, so I found a guy on YouTube who happened to be incredible. My dear gaffer, UD, died in the middle of shooting, and that was very difficult for the whole crew. Broke my bones, hand, foot, tore my shoulder.
One thing he doesn't mention in that clip is that while shooting, the people financing the film cut off money because there were so many issues. And he still figured it out. And also, put yourself in that mindset. Remember those early COVID days? Remember those COVID bubbles we put ourselves in? It was so hard to do the gymnastics of like doing the distancing with people. Now imagine trying to create a bubble in COVID in a foreign country with not just like your friends or your household, but 300 or 400 people trying to make a film. Just insane logistics to try and juggle. So I want to break this down into 5 parts. We're going to be talking about overcoming imposter syndrome and this impossible situation that I think is relatable to anybody who's embarking on any creative endeavor and feels that imposter syndrome. And I want to break it down into 5 parts. Number 1, everyone is an imposter, including Beyonce. I got a hot take on this. Hear me out. Give me a chance to explain myself. Everyone is an imposter, number 1. Number 2, accountability to others. 3, improvising. 4, mindset. And finally, 5, mentorship. This is where we're going to talk about how Jordan Peele got involved in the film and really helped bring it to the status that it is today. Okay, so number 1, everyone is an imposter, including you, including me, including Dev Patel, and including Beyonce. Anytime we step out and try something new, we're an imposter. We haven't done it. And this is the case for most creative people, especially people with ADHD brains. We want to explore something new. And anytime we have to do something new, it's going to be new to us. And we're not going to know exactly what we're doing. We're a bit of an imposter. Beyonce is experiencing this right now. She made a country album. She's not a country artist. It's definitely not in her repertoire, but she's trying something new. She's putting herself out there. There is a level of imposter syndrome that she is going through. And so anytime that you want to try something new, you are an imposter. And to accept that, there's something about acknowledging that you're an imposter and being okay with that. Number 2, accountability to others. There's a whole spectrum on how this can show up. For Dev, he was accountable to entire film set. 300, 400 people, plus the people that were putting up the money to make this film. He had to figure it out. He had to make it work. Here, listen to Dev talk about this.
You have talked openly about imposter syndrome or low self-esteem, and yet you have all these moments where you could easily just be like, I quit, or this isn't going to come to fruition. How do you overcome that?
I think maybe it was because of COVID or something, but I felt a tremendous responsibility to the people that I'd hired, that had come on this journey, had left their families to be in this bubble.
And when you are accountable to others, it allows you to rise to that occasion. It allows you to dismiss any idea of failing, because when you're doing it by yourself, it's easy to let go. But when you have to show up for others, you're more likely to do that thing. Issa Rae talks about this, that like when she's writing, sometimes it's better to like surround yourself with some other people to show up to the thing. If you want to run a marathon and you're doing it by yourself, it's a lot easier to wake up on one of those practice running days and be like, I don't want to do that thing. But if you're in a run club and you're running for other people or you're running for a charity, you're more likely to do it. So having that accountability to others is so key. Okay, number 3, improvising. One of the things I love to hear him talk about is how he just had to figure it out. Camera broke one day, so he used his iPhone to film some of the scenes in the movie. They couldn't bring his stunt team in. He was originally going to use the John Wick stunt team. They couldn't bring him in because of COVID. The country was shut down. So he had to go on YouTube and just find someone else who could do it locally. He also did that with production design. These are 2 very critical parts of the film. And he just figured it out. And he just made it happen. ADHD brains are so good at improvising. We're so good at problem solving, especially in emergency situations. There's no surprise that you see higher rates of ADHD in professions around being a first responder or high stress situations. Leaning in on that ability and trusting your gut to know that, you know what, I'm just going to figure it out. Now, let's talk about mindset. As a director, it is your job to set the tone on set. And if you are sitting around moping around, if you're talking about all the things that are going wrong, then that is going to reverberate throughout the entire cast. And it's going to have a negative impact on the film. And this kind of goes hand in hand with being accountable to others. But when you create a certain positive mindset, a growth mindset, it changes the trajectory of the thing that you're trying to make. So if you beat yourself up, if you're always pointing out all the negatives, well, that's the thing that's going to be highlighted. Here's an example of him trying to rally his troops and be positive throughout all these impossible barriers that were thrown at him throughout the filming process.
We couldn't go down. We had to keep going. We had to find a way to make it. So even if I didn't have the faith in myself, I didn't want to let down the 450 beating hearts around me, you know.
So it sounds like surrounding yourself around people who can cheerlead you.
And I gave a lot of like William Wallace, like, you know, rally cry speeches on a daily basis. But it's amazing. I mean, what a dream to be able to direct a movie.
There's some fantastic work with Professor Carol Dweck and her work around mindset. And one of the studies that I love is that there's 2 groups of people. There's one group that watched a 5-minute video on all the negative impacts of stress. And then there was another group that watched all the positive impacts of stress. And guess what? Both those groups reacted accordingly. The group that watched the negative video tended to display the negative aspects of stress. The group that watched the positive, well, they took that positive route. We know stress can be lots of things. It can be detrimental to our health, but at the same time, it can also warn us. It can prepare us for the thing that's ahead, the unknown. This is critical for imposter syndrome. Finally, mentorship. This is the one that I love the most.
My agent calls me and says, Jordan Peele's seen it and he loved it. He just saw me. Yeah. You know, I'd been through hell on this thing and I was wiped and I was sad. And it was like a therapy session. And he's like, by the way, I hope you don't mind. I shared it with Universal and they like it and we're going to buy it. And I was like, ah!
After the film was done, it looked like this was going to go straight to streaming, straight to Netflix. Not that that's a bad thing, but it wasn't on the path for this big theatrical release that it got. At some point during this process, Jordan Peele stepped in and saw the movie, watched it twice. And he called Dev and he goes, Dev, I love this. This is not going straight to streaming. I want to buy this along with Universal and we're going to give it its proper rollout. We're going to take it to the film festival. It's going to get the red carpet treatment. I believe in this film. I believe in you. And he started mentoring him. They made tweaks to the film. Jordan Peele co-signed the film, brought on as an executive producer saying, hey, I am putting my arm around you and this project fully. And it's because he had this mentor throughout this process that said, no. I see it bigger than you see it. And I'm going to help you get it over that finish line. And even beyond Jordan Peele, earlier in the process, Dev didn't even believe that he was the one to direct it. He wrote it, but he was trying to look for another director. And there were people in his life, friends and colleagues, who said, no, you're selling yourself short. You should be the one who directs this film. You're the one that's passionate about it. You're the one that knows this material better than anyone. You should direct it. And it's because he had these people around him and these mentors that were able to recognize his ability and his potential in this film, even when he didn't. ADHD people often live in a silo. We are ashamed to talk about our ADHD, to talk about our imposter syndrome, to put ourselves out there. It holds us back from a lot of our potential. We can't unlock these things by ourselves. We need other people to be able to see things that we don't see. And that can come in the form of friendship, but really mentorship. Other people who are in the industry that we're trying to do, who can see things in ways that we don't. There are so many points in this process where he could have given up. First of all, right at the beginning, not even made the film because he felt maybe he wasn't worthy enough. But again, everyone is an imposter. He understood that he was, but not to the point that he was not going to at least try the thing that he wanted to do. Second, he found accountability in others. When he had to show up for other people, it's a lot harder to give up when you have to be there and set an expectation and meet an expectation from others. When things weren't going right in the moment, he improvised. He had a positive growth mindset throughout the process, and he trusted and leaned in on his mentors. These are fundamental building blocks for overcoming a lot of the imposter syndrome that we experience. It's something that I use, and it's something that I really encourage others that I work with, people that I coach and I mentor in the ADHD space. If you want to check out my entire interview from the project with Dev Patel, I will put that in the comment section. Do you know someone who would enjoy this conversation? Share it with them. And if you have just a moment, please rate our show and leave a comment on whichever platform you listen to. It really helps us reach other creative thinkers with ADHD just like you. My name is Hyla. Thanks for listening. ADHD is not about productivity or focus. All the apps, planners, and pills that we obsess over mean nothing unless you first establish these two main fundamentals. Number one, what is your purpose? If this isn't crystal clear to you, you will always fall victim to distractions. And number two, what are your needs? Have you curated an environment and a life that helps get the most out of your ADHD? Are you surrounded around people who inspire you creatively and hold you accountable on the days that you don't want to do the thing that you know you should be doing? Join us for ADHD Reimagined, an 8-week live course that helps you find your creative purpose and defines your personal needs, so you can move beyond burnout and procrastination and transform your ability to focus and follow through on the things most important to you. Sign up today at alldaydreaming.org.